Hello everybody. Today we're going to learn how to make a traditional Christmas treat in this tutorial. We're going to make mince pies. These are the ingredients that we're going to use to make our special pastry for our Christmas mince pies. As you can see, I put the butter into the bowl and if you're following this tutorial, the ingredients, I will give you the amount as we go along, but it will also be in the description. So I have the butter, which is 10 ounces, in the bowl, and I'm softening it. We are going to cream the butter in this particular pastry rather than rubbing it in, and we're going to mix it with some sugar. For this very rich pastry, we're going to use icing sugar, which of course I'm going to sieve. This is one of my least favourite jobs because it's a bit like having a snowstorm. And we mix this in. Now I'm going to continue to cream this until it's really soft. It takes a little while, so just let me do that and we'll come back. So now we have a really nice, smooth, creamed mixture of the 10 ounces of butter and the 4 ounces of icing sugar. We're now going to add 4 ounces of cornflour and mix it through. The cornflour is what gives the very short quality to the pastry and makes it very much melt in the mouth. And we just have to work this in very gently without causing the flour to come all over my face and make me look like a snowman. And then we have some plain flour which goes in, and I'm almost ready to add the plain flour. And the plain flour, and there is 12 ounces of plain flour going into that mixture. So I'm now just going to bring all of that together, and then we lightly knead it before we put it into the fridge and give it a time to relax and chill, so it makes it easier to roll out. We normally give it about an hour covered in cling film. So I've mixed all the flour in with the butter and the sugar, and it looks quite dry, but if you put your hand in and you knead it together, you will end up with your pastry dough looking like this. And it just takes a little bit of kneading to bring it together nice and smoothly, and then it will go wrapped in cling film into the fridge for an hour. If you would like to see more tutorials, please like and subscribe. It would be very much appreciated. So now I've got the pastry nicely kneaded so it's soft. I've put some flour on the worktop and I'm now going to roll it out. A little bit of flour onto the rolling pin, and then always roll away from yourself, a quarter turn of the pastry, keeping even pressure on the rolling pin. That means that the pastry stays in shape and the finished pastry has the same thickness throughout, which is quite important. Whilst I'm doing this, I just want to talk a little bit about the next part, which is cutting out and making sure the pastry fits the case as well. So I have a 12-hole bun tray here, and what we do is you always take your cutter and you make sure it's slightly bigger than the top of the hole. For sweet mince pies, you will always use a fluted cutter, which is like the crinkly edge. For plain things, you would always use the plain cutter. But for this, I'm going to use the fluted cutter. It's important that the bun tray that you use has very, very gradual slopes up inside it. I have a couple here that wouldn't be suitable. This is a lovely mini cake tin but the tray, if I turn it that way, it's very, very square on the bottom, and that's very difficult for mince pies. And the reason it is difficult is, that's another one, I use this one when I make individual frittata, but the reason, if they have very straight sides, that you don't use it for mince pies is that sometimes the sugary filling can bubble out and it makes it very difficult to get it out in one piece. So we have our pastry rolled and we are going to cut it out using our fluted cutter. And with pastry, it's always good to lift with a knife so it stays in shape, and just lay it on the top. Don't try and push it in, but use your fingers to ease it down the sides and then push it to the bottom. I'll do another one of those. And then for the top, we'll just cut out a couple there. And for our filling, I have a nice jar of mincemeat, good quality mincemeat. And I'm not going to put too much in there because it can bubble out and be very unattractive. So we just a little, probably half a teaspoon in each of those. And then we damp the edges with a little bit of water. You could use egg or you could use milk, but water's quite good enough. And then we just pop the top on and press it down. To finish, I'm just going to use a fork to press down in the middle. Now when I've done all 12, they will go into the oven, and they're in the oven about 15 to 20 minutes on 160 degrees C. And when they come out, we just leave them in the tins to cool, and then we can lift them out, put them on a cooling rack and dust them with icing sugar. And we'll come back to that in a little while. So here are my finished mince pies. They smell absolutely delicious, and with a little dusting of icing sugar and a glass of sherry or a nice cup of hot chocolate, they'll be really scrumptious. I hope you've enjoyed this. The one thing that I didn't mention in the video was that the mince pies go into a 180 degrees C oven, 160 degrees fan, and they're in for about 15 to 20 minutes. The coloration on the pastry should be very slight, and it should just be going a pale golden brown around the edges before you lift them out. Anything else you can read in the description that's going to accompany this little video. But I hope you have a try of making these, and I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas. Bye everyone.